Good morning. Today is the 21st day of Herson. We call it Mar Herson. This is the month after the month full of holidays, the month of Tishrei. And we're launching this week the new Torah portion, Chai Sora. Each of us our own individual new adventure, finding our way in God's world. I wanted today just to take a short few moments to focus on the Rebbe's entry into his book of daily thoughts, Hayom Yom. It's a very brief entry, I think a very powerful one that goes beyond the brevity of words. It's about prayer, and in prayer, the constellation of what we do as Jews got a lot of different mitzvahs, different holidays, different daily mitzvahs, and prayer at one level is just another one of the elements, another one of those line items. As a matter of fact, the idea of prayer itself is not so clearly a biblical mitzvah. It's the idea of turning to God when we need Him. The structured prayer as we have it at some level is more rabbinic. At the same time, prayer is about that two elementary things, and I'll get to the entry. One, it's about an intimate relationship with God. It's open communication with God. We can be doing the right things all day, following Torah, but not really thinking about our relationship with God per se, because we're focusing on the work at hand. Prayer is about a face-to-face, it's an embrace with God, going out to coffee with God, however you want to frame that. Number two, prayer is a time for face-to-face with ourselves, and it goes together with the idea of face-to-face with God. It's a time when we really want to be honest with ourselves in the safety of our own hearts, minds, souls, to think about who we are and think about who we need to be, and try to chart a path for the hours ahead or the day ahead, without getting too ambitious about the entire life ahead, to be able to chart a path of being closer to who we can be. So the entry here is that prayer, the service of prayer. In other words, it's the language is precise. Prayer, the Hebrew of it is it's the labor of prayer, the work of prayer. Prayer is not just about opening a book and saying words. That can be nice, but it can be quite empty. It's about work. It's about focus. It's about achieving. It's about changing the balance, the equilibrium in our relationship with God and relationship with ourselves. So the service or the work of prayer, the Rabbi writes, is what brings what we know cognitively, the ideas that we may find correct, even interesting, or something that we can acknowledge, and bring those ideas into the feelings of the heart. Because one of the primary wrestles, human impediments that we find in Hasidic thought is the finding success and bringing ideas into feeling. Because good ideas, if they stay cerebral, if they stay conceptual, and they don't get our juices flowing, if they don't get our blood pumping, if they don't really touch our heart, they're going to stay academic, ivory tower, and we'll move on. We can hear a great lecture, interesting, close the book, close the door, close the Zoom, and move on to real life. That's not where Hasidic thought wants us to go. We want Torah to be transformative. So if we're sitting and listening or reading a thought, and it's something that does strike an intellectual bell, now the work starts with how to translate that into my emotions, because we act based on emotions. And the emotional profile is really what drives how we act. If we find value and beauty in something, we're motivated to pursue it. If we find something emotionally repellent, we're more likely to stay away from it. If it's just an idea, well, if the emotions are not in sync with the intellectual, the emotions will usually win. So prayer is about taking the ideas of what we studied, high-minded Torah ideas, moral ideas, and bring them into our hearts so we feel it, so they're real, so they're relevant, so they're actionable. Together, when we have our mind, as the Rabbi writes, and our heart in sync, in agreement on where we need to go, then prayer is about taking that into action. Saying, so what am I going to do about this? Just to give an example, if someone has told me that losing my temper is something that has a negative effect on my friends, my work, my coworkers, my family, and I understand it, and I pray, and I'm thinking about who I need to be, and I think, no, I have to find that appalling. I've got to look at it and say, no, there's a red flag go off in my head and say, I've got to stop that. I've got to catch myself. I've got to find a way to put my mind and my heart in a better place so that I don't act in a way that I've acted before, which is counterproductive. So that's just as an example. So prayer is about trying to not only feel it, but to also chart a realistic and concrete course, path for the steps ahead to say, what am I going to do about it? So prayer, in a way, is really the backbone of Torah life, because it's that transformative link where we take good ideas and make them into good action. Quite a mouthful, but I can see from there why prayer is just so precious. And we pray 3 times a day because one prayer a day isn't long enough to have long-lasting transformative action. It's the way to a more substantive and happier life.